How do we form habits? How do certain parts of our behaviour become so routine that they almost feel instinctual? What happens in your brain? Well, there are two parts of your brain which are intimately connected with habit forming. The first is something called the basal ganglia. Now that has lots of different functions, but among them are procedural learning, emotion, routine behaviour and memory. So you can see why that would be important, that part of the brain would be important in helping to develop habitual behaviour. Now the basal ganglia connects with another part of your brain known as the cerebral cortex. That's where we do all our thinking, our reasoning, and that's also involved in memory. So what happens then when one part of the brain wants to communicate with another part of the brain? And it will do that, it will try to communicate with another part of the brain every time you think something or do something. So every type of behaviour and every thought is preceded by a connection in part of your brain. Well, the first thing it does is try to set up a small electrical charge which passes along a circuit of nerve cells between one part of the brain and the other. Now, each of these nerve cells or neurons is actually discrete. That means they're individual units in their own right. And so there's a gap between every nerve cell. And that gap is called a synaptic gap or a synapse. And what happens is your body actually produces a chemical to bridge that gap. They're called neurotransmitters. You may have heard of them, such things as dopamine, serotonin, endorphins. They're all different types of neurotransmitter. So what happens is a small electrical charge passes between one part of the brain to another across the synapses, across the synaptic gaps via these neurotransmitters. And every time it does that, it's like exercise. It makes the circuit stronger, so it gets faster. And if you look at, for example, different professions, you'll find different parts of their brains are configured in a slightly different way. I saw a report the other day whereby taxi drivers had part of their brain, the hippocampus, which was particularly interested in map reading and directions and finding their way around, was particularly enlarged, which you'd expect in a taxi driver. So when you think about it, every time you have a thought, every time you make an action, you're reinforcing certain circuits. Even if you have a memory, you're reinforcing and building, like building a muscle, circuits in your brain. So what you're actually doing is you're reconfiguring, with your thoughts and your actions, are reconfiguring your brain all of the time. You're building your own brain, your own personality. That's why they call it a mindset. What I want to do in my book, Making Happiness a Habit, is try to build positive mindsets by trying to configure your brain in a way that will enhance not only your self-esteem, but boost your self-confidence and give you a generally happier and more positive outlook on life.